talofa to all of our viewers today. Special talofa to all of our Year 12 English students. I hope that you are ready to learn something new. But like always, remember to turn off all of those devices because they will cause some sort of distraction during our lesson. Our lesson for today is based on our strand 2, reading and writing. Specifically, we will be covering again response to literature, and we will be focusing on a new poem. The key learning outcome for today's lesson is to demonstrate understanding of literature through analyzing a selected poem. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to identify what poems are, identify the key message, the themes, and social issues within this poem. And overall, you will be able to apply poetry to your everyday life. But before we can start today, let's all think about our last lesson. And we have some follow-up questions. Question number 1. State the difference between a simile and a metaphor. Remember, we talked about this before, the difference between a simile and a metaphor. Yes, we are talking about poetic devices. Question number 2. State the difference between an adverb and an adjective. Question number 3. Give the narrative that Father and Son was written in. Does everyone remember what narrative means? Yes, you're correct. We're talking about the point of view that the poem was written in. Question number 4. Name the poet of Father and Son. Name the poet of Father and Son. Remember, Father and Son, that is the name of the poem or the title of the poem. The poet is the person who wrote the poem. And our last question, explain a message portrayed from Father and Son. I'll give you 1 minute to discuss your answers between your partners. Okay, let's discuss our answers together. Question number 1. State the difference between a simile and a metaphor. Hopefully you all remembered. A simile, it is a comparison of two things using as or like. A metaphor, it does not use as or like. Hopefully you got that correct, so just put a big, nice tick next to your answer. The difference between an adverb and an adjective, we also talked about this during our previous lesson. An adverb, it modifies the verb. An adjective, it modifies the noun. Awesome. The narrative, give the narrative that Father and Son was written in. Yes, you're also correct. Father and Son was written in the third person. How would you know that? Because it uses the pronoun he. So the first line of Father and Son, he comes home now. So he, it indicates that the poem was written in the third person. Question number 4. Name the poets. Who wrote Father and Son? You're also correct. Ruperake Betaya. And our last question explained a message portrayed from Father and Son. We also discussed this during our previous lesson. Father and Son, it gives us the lesson, or it gives the message of communicating with your parents. Remember the love of your parents. Remember the tapoinga. Remember that you are supported by people within your families, your community, your churches, your relatives, and they all want you to succeed in life. Okay, let's look at our poem that we will be covering today. Darkness Within the Lights by Karaka Karaka. Okay, everyone, let's look at our chosen poem for today. Our chosen poem is from Cook Islands. It is by the poet named Karaka Karaka. And the title of our poem is Darkness Within the Light. Shall we all read together? Sure. Show off with your New Zealand degree. Think you're smart? Let's compete climbing for coconuts. Can you husk my number of nuts? Can you dive and fill the sack with pearl shells? Count, see who's got the most. You really think I'm dumb? You're not aware of the darkness within your light. How I pity you. Foreign knowledge has blinded your heart. When I welcomed you with a greeting kiss, you offered your cheek to someone else. When I slapped your thigh to say hello, you thought that I was seducing you. I spoke to you in Maori, but you replied in English. You wouldn't lend a hand unless I paid cash. I despair, my friend, you leave me in desolate. It's a nice poem, Okay, let's all discuss our poem, our chosen poem for today. Remember, Darkness Within the Lights is the name of our poem, but Karaka Karaka is the poet of this poem. Okay, let's go through lines. As we discussed in our previous lesson, the sentences, these are called lines of the poem. Line 1, line 2, line 3, and so on. There is no particular stanza because in this poem, the way that the poet wrote this poem, it is in one large stanza. So we will be referring to the ideas as we go through the lines. Sure. So the first line, show off with your New Zealand degree. The interesting part of this line is you can see in other lines, it has a exclamation mark. And everyone knows the meaning of exclamation marks. When you see an exclamation mark in a sentence, that means that that person is, yes, yelling. Like e mai aka ko. So it seems like the mood or the tone of the poem, it is very good. It is angry. It is from a point of view of someone that is in anger. So who are the personas? Who do you think the persona of this poem is, or who are they, if there are more than one? We'll discuss through the poem, then we will actually have an idea who the persona is. So show off with your New Zealand degree, it indicates that this person is talking about someone that has returned back from overseas. Good. So just like father and son, the son returned from overseas education. It is just the same as the beginning of this poem. This person has come back from overseas with a degree. Think you're smart. So when you say think you're smart to someone, when you say those lines, it is an indication that there is a dilemma. When you're talking about someone, assuming that that person thinks that they are smarter than you. Interesting, huh? Let's compete climbing for coconuts. So if you look at the lines after the first two lines, it talks about routines, daily routines or chores that we do within our communities, like climbing the coconuts, fill the sack for pearl shells. So filling the sack with pearl shells and climbing the coconuts, these are particular traditional or cultural tasks done by people in the Cook Islands. Remember that the poet is from the Cook Islands, so the social issue that is portrayed through this poem, it reflects his community. Compete climbing for coconuts. Can you husk my number of nuts? So the number of nuts refers to the coconuts. So you can see the pattern. So this person, the first persona, is angry with the person that arrived from overseas. And it seems like the contrasting between knowledge or foreign knowledge or having education overseas in contrast to daily routines or chores that we do in our families, within our communities, and during our daily lives, climbing for coconuts and also diving in the sea to get shells or pearl shells. You really think I'm dumb? So again, this question, it acts as a rhetorical question. Everyone knows what rhetorical questions are. When they are used within poetry, it doesn't give the exact answer, but it makes you think. It makes us think very hard about the conflict or the dilemma that is happening within the poem. You're not aware of the darkness within the light. Oh, this is very nice. So it is the reflection of the name of the poem, Darkness Within the Light. So if you think about the darkness, literally, there is no place that is dark and is also light at the same time. When you go to a place that is completely dark, that means the reason why it's dark because there is no light. So it is a really good contrast between the dark and the light. You're not aware of the darkness within your light. So the poet, Okaraka, uses the contrast between the darkness or the misunderstanding, the inability to do daily chores, as stated above, climbing coconuts, diving to get pearl shells, husking coconuts. Those are metaphorically described as the darkness. The light, it is described as the education, so the foreign knowledge. You have returned from school, from overseas, obviously that you have the knowledge, you have the intelligence, so you were very smart. So that is metaphorically described as the light. In contrast to the darkness is what you can't do in your daily routines. How I pity you. Foreign knowledge has blinded your heart. That means it is it's a complaint. So the first persona is still ranting or complaining about this person that has arrived from overseas and thinks that this person has all the knowledge, but traditionally, culturally, routines that they do in everyday life, that's where they lack the knowledge. When I welcomed you with a greeting kiss, you offered your cheek to someone else. Buya. That means something happened. When people arrive from overseas, and we do this with our meet and greet culture, we always give them a kiss on the cheek. So maybe the persona is trying to kiss this person, but they offer their cheek to someone else. Longo winga. They tried to kiss, he tried to offer his kiss to his friend, but she moved to someone else. How do you know it's between a girl and a boy? The next lines tell you this. It indicates that the poem or the two personas, it is a relationship between a boy and a girl. When I slapped your thigh to say hello, you thought I was seducing you. So again, these 4 lines, they indicate that the poem is about a boy and a girl. So who do you think was the person that arrived from overseas? You're correct, the girl. The girl traveled overseas and she returned with her degree or her qualification, and the boy remained on island, and he is very intelligent in terms of daily routines, traditionally and cultural activities or culture practices that he does every day. But it seems that he disagrees with the way that his friend or the girl responds to him. So as you see, he tried to kiss her, but she offered, or she moved away, or she kissed someone else. He tried to say hello by slapping her thigh. Everyone should understand the part of your body that is your thigh. So your thigh is the upper part of your leg. I spoke to you in Maori, but you replied in English. So the use of the word Maori, it is the native language of the Cook Islands. Cook Island Maori, that is the language that they speak. He spoke to her in their native language, but she responded back in English. You wouldn't lend a hand unless I paid cash. So again, he is still angry with his friend or with this young lady that returned from overseas, and he assumes that she will never help him unless he pays her, gives her money. The last line of the poem is a very powerful line. I despair, my friend, you leave me and desolate. So the last line indicates that this was a friendship that they had trust and they believed in each other. They grew up together, but at the end, they no longer are friends. Or you leave me and desolate, so he pretty much has given up. There is no more hope for their relationship or their friendship because of the conflict between ideas. So if you think about this poem, just like Father and Son, it talks about foreign knowledge, or it talks about education. Like I said before in Father and Son, despite the fact that you have never been educated overseas, you have never been overseas, Kauraka Kauraka reminds us that to always stay humble. So some of us, we move from our urban areas or from rural areas to urban areas in order for us to get an education. And on our return, sometimes people assume that we are very, we are very high-minded of our achievements in life. So this is what Kauraka Kauraka is trying to remind us. Our level of education, it is not described by our qualification or the higher level that we go. No, regardless if you're in year 11, year 10, year 12, it doesn't mean that we are smarter than everyone else. The way that we treat others and the way that we respond back to others, it reflects our true education or our true level of education. Let's go back to our brainstorming method in order for us to unpack this whole poem again. How are you going with your brainstorm? Do you remember our method, our summary method that we talked about our previous lesson? Yes, always remember to start off with a brainstorm. Good. Brainstorm in no particular order. All of those ideas that are coming to your mind in no particular order, like I mentioned, just write it down, and then you can arrange all of those ideas at the end of your brainstorm. Good. Okay, let's look on the whiteboard and look at the brainstorm that I wrote. Darkness within the light, that is the name of the poem. Then I thought about the word neglect. Yes, there is some sort of neglect. There is a conflict between the boy and the girl, so the two personas. The girl, remember, the girl was a person that went overseas, and when she returned with her degree, the boy assumes that the girl does not live up to the same standards, or she does not remember her traditions, her culture, and also her everyday routines. The supports, yes, it also talks about the support. So the boy assumed that when his friend came back, she would still be the same. So he supported her during her studies, but something happened. She changed, she totally changed when she returned. Talks about a family, of course. Like I said before, our families will always remember us when we are studying. Daily routines, yes, it talks about a lot of daily routines in the poem. It talks about climbing coconuts, coconut trees, and also husking coconuts, diving in to get shells, pearl shells. So all of those are categorized under daily routines. And that also goes with culture and traditions, the culture of greeting people, using a friendly kiss, and also speaking to someone in their native language. The pressure, yes, it also talks about the pressure. Just because we go to school, so you can always apply this to everyday life. So there are some of your cousins or some of the children within your family that don't go to school, or they go to a school in rural areas. They always assume, or sometimes we normally assume, us that are in the urban areas, that either or are better than each other. But always remember, darkness within the light, it reminds us that our level of education, regardless of what school you're going to or you're actually attending, regardless if you live in Samoa or overseas, the level of education is the way that you treat others. So this is a simple brainstorm. Like I talked about before, you use the words or the ideas that you have chosen from the poem to create your themes. So you put it in the theme column. So the themes that I have selected: education, neglect, expectations, and routines. This is very important, like I've mentioned before. We don't expect to have the same interpretation as this poem with everyone else, because we all have different experiences. It's the way that you use this poem and you apply it to your everyday life, and then you will get a very meaningful message that applies to you personally. So always remember, if you try to apply the poem to your everyday life, think about which persona are you? Are you the girl? Are you the person that is physically leaving home or moving to another area or location because of your education or to attend school? Or are you the boy, the one that remains within the family and does all of those chores or traditional practices on a daily basis? Social issues, like we talked about before. How do you get the social issues? You use the concepts or you use a theme and think about an issue that is provoked or an issue that is the main factor is caused by that theme. So for example, the theme of education. What is an issue that is caused by education? The social issue assumes that you are better. Yes, and like I have mentioned before, normally a lot of students assume or they think that they are better than others because of the way or the level of understanding or level of education that they have achieved in life. If you speak better English, or if you speak better Samoan, or if you are better in any specific subject that you are learning in school, then you just assume that you are better. So what is the message? Remember, how do you get the message? Always remember, so the theme, you got the theme from the brainstorm. The brainstorm, it creates the issue or the problem, and the message is the way that you solve the problem. So always remember, in order for you to fully understand the poem, you need to create solutions to the problems. How would you use what you have learned from within the poem? It indicates some sort of problem, and how are you going to solve the problem? Your level of education is measured by the way you treat others. This is very true, and it is a very important message that we always need to stay humble and remind ourselves. Despite if you came first in class or second in class, or you came first in all of the subjects in school, the way that you treat others is the reflection of your education. So education is a very broad topic, and Karaka Karaka reminds us that education is a reflection of who you are through actions. Good. Our second concept or theme is neglect. What is the issue that is caused by neglect within the poem? The disregard of your upbringing. Saulele. A lot of us, when we move to schools in Apia, or move from schools from Sava'i to Upolu, or move from your uncle's house to your auntie's house, regardless of where you are moving, you always seem to forget your humble upbringings. Just because where you are moving towards is better, then we're better in a sense that you have free internet, you have a computer, or maybe your uncle has a car, you normally used to catch the bus, and then you disregard, you forget about your humble beginnings. And it is a problem, it is an issue. So what is the message? How can you solve that issue? Always remember your humble beginnings. And by remembering is by thinking about the love. Think about your parents. Think about everyone that has supported you to be where you are, exactly where you are today. Without that support, I'm sure that none of us will be in school, and none of us will have a vision in life without the support. So always remember your humble beginning. Expectation. This is a very good concept. The expectation. People expect something from you, or just because someone goes to a certain school or has a certain upbringing, then you assume all different sorts of stereotypes about them. Assume that people won't change. And this is the expectation. For example, if I grew up in Falealili and I moved to Apia to go to school, people assume that because I'm living in Apia, I do not remember my humble upbringing in Falealili. And this is what we normally do. We assume so many different things about people because we try to compare them to us. And it is a problem because we assume that people won't change. Everyone changes, regardless of how old you are, or where you are living, or where you're staying, what school you go to. Everyone changes because we grow up. Yes, we grow up. And the message is we need to accept. We need to accept that people will change when they go overseas. Yes. We've seen this of a lot of ongoing issues with our cousins or our relatives or our friends that used to live in Samoa, then they moved overseas, either for school or either for work or either to be permanent residents overseas. And then we just assume that they will have the same morals, they will have the same values, same way of living when they were here in Samoa. We always need to accept that they are eventually going to change, and change is inevitable. But it's the way that we see how people change and accept them that is what's most important. And our last concept is routines. The social issue about routines is the different experiences within our families. Yes, so like taking my example again, I moved from Falealili to go to school here in Apia. In Falealili, I used to climb on coconut trees, but here in Apia, there are no coconut trees around our house. So the different experiences, it becomes a problem because I no longer do the food in the umkuka or the outdoor kitchen. We use the oven. So the social issue here is the different experiences, but again, without assuming that your experience is the same with someone else's experience. So what is the message here? Accept that we don't have the same culture and traditional backgrounds. This is very true. A lot of us, we assume that when someone does not speak proper Samoan, or they do not speak fluently or rhetorical language, we just assume if you're palang. And we always characterize them into these students have a lot of materialistic materials. For example, they have a cell phone, they have a fancy car, they have a lot of reading books, and then you compare them to you, thinking that you do not have all of these materialistic things that someone else has. But always remember, our different experiences, regardless of where you grew up and what school you're going to, we are all at school for the same reason, in order for us to get a good education and get a quality education in order for us to get a job in the future. So when we graduate, just like our persona has mentioned, when you graduate in the future, always remember the reason why you went to grab those opportunities and to grab the education is to find a job. Once you have found a job, you can always give back to those people or your parents, your family, your communities, that they supported you along the way, and you will always remember to give back to them by saying thank you. Not thank you just with words, but thank you using actions as well. So, Karaka with darkness within the nights, it reminds us about the importance of getting quality education, the importance of remembering our humble beginnings, and the importance of not over assuming that everyone is the same and everyone won't change. But most of all, always remember your level of education or how smart we are is measured by the way that we treat others. Hopefully that you have learned something very important or something inspiring during our second lesson for poetry, and hopefully that you can apply it to your everyday life. Be kind to one another. Until next time, Tō whāsau fō.